brand. Leadership for God and country.
Yes, good day. Welcome to Leadership Television Studio on Ondo State Decide. Today, November 16, 2024, these people of Ondo State, why am I mentioning Edo State? They are going to the polls to elect their governor for the next 4 years. My name is Winifred Bebo, and on my left, I have, on my right, I'm actually flanked by Leadership House Analyst. On my left is the group political editor of Leadership Media Group, Chibuzo Kagwe.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
Of course, on my right, I have a doctor in the house. He's James Quinn of the National Assembly. It's a pleasure to have you on the program.
Welcome.
Yes, today, November 16, 2024. As we speak, elections are currently going on in Ondo State. The candidates, which are 17 in number, are vying for votes from about 1.7 million voters in the state. And INEC has already alerted Nigerians that it has deployed 4,200 beavers in place and 812 on standby. And the INEC said the number of registered voters increased from 1.8 million in 2020 to about over 2 million at the close of the last continuous voter registration in the state. Ondo State Resident Electoral Commissioner Mrs. Olawatoyin Babalola gave the following figures: 58,708 new voters were registered, 3,132 voters transferred their registration into the state, and 123 voters transferred out of the state, leaving the total number of new registered voters at 2,063,061. The rep further stated that out of the over 2 million registered voters, only 1,757,205 had collected their PVCs, while the uncollected PVCs were 295,856. Now, welcome back to the studio. Chibuzo, yes. Today is a big day. We have 17 contestants vying for that number one seat in Ondo State. And incidentally, we also have the PDP candidate, Guba candidate Ajayi, who was also former deputy governor to the late governor of the state. And he's also slugging it out alongside the APC's ruling party, who was also a former deputy governor and got elevated when the boss passed on.
Yeah,
what are your thoughts?
It's an interesting scenario, the battle of deputy governors.
Yes.
Just
battle
as
of deputy governors.
In Edo, we had the battle of godfathers. Now we're having the battle of
deputy
governors. Well, so far, so good. I think there's nothing, how do I put it, spectacular so far. It's been the same. Much of what we have seen are things we would expect would happen. The good and the bad, as it were. PDP candidates are already complaining about the way the process is going. Complaining about
the beavers
issue
malfunctioning.
And then there's a complaint about the unleashing of thugs against some PDP people. Why the APC is saying none of that happened. So it's just the normal, the regular, if you like, but as it stands, we can only be hopeful that if it continues like this and we don't have massive security challenges and people really come out to engage the process, then perhaps it will be a bit better than what we had as far people, voters coming out to engage the process. You can't have 1.7 million people, a little over 1.7 million people getting their PVCs, and then we have a few number of people determining who becomes governor of the state. We would expect that a good number out of that 1.7 million people actually come out to vote, so that we broaden the space for decision making on who becomes governor of the state. Yes.
All right, thank you so much. Now, Dr. James, will lucky be twice lucky this time around? Talking about the incumbent governor,
Okay.
Well,
Thank you so much. INEC has severally warned that nobody should announce election before then. But Lucky may likely be lucky like his name because this election, without undermining anybody's political clout, the situation we witnessed in Edo is not quite here because in Edo it was a matter of they were almost running neck to neck on at the early beginning of the whole process. But in this case, Lucky is there with the former governor. Sorry, that his predecessor because he took over from him as a deputy governor, Agbola Ajayi, and I think the next party because in the case of Edo, even Labour Party had you can't dismiss Labour Party there totally. Because, but coming back to the case of Ondo,
we have 17 candidates.
No, we have 17 candidates, but as it is now, we know that in Nigeria now we used to have two. We're heading towards a two-party system.
Oh yes.
Where PDP, APC were dominating the political talk, but now Labour Party, as at 2023 general elections, the Labour Party came on ground. Yes, but now in this case, even the Labour Party, which is supposed to be the third leg to be the come between PDP and APC, as at yesterday, barely 24 hours, even less than 24 hours the election, a judgment came from the court of appeal, and they have to bring back a candidate who was dropped. That is Festus, who was dropped, and who was dropped, replaced with with a business Olushola. So with all this thing that is happening now, Labour Party, it seems not to be much on ground there, and also even the SDP, because we have the SDP candidate, Benson Akimboye, who before yesterday or some days back made us to even believe that he was endorsed by the camp of the deceased former governor, because the deceased former governor's political family were not comfortable with Lucky. So with all these things was saying, but the political family of Akiti came out yesterday to debunk all his claims that they will see we're not with you or we're not with him, as he claimed that we have endorsed him. So that is, all these things may end up being odds that may work, in favor of Lucky, because Lucky of the ruling party, and as at yesterday, many governors of APC in their numbers. In fact, there was a situation where the governor of Benue State, Reverend Father Hyacinth, earlier met with the Benue community in Akure. That is the Benue community in Ondo, asking them to vote for the APC candidate. And I think many of such things were taking place. So Lucky, maybe by tomorrow, because we know, maybe by tomorrow that INEC will officially declare it, Lucky may likely be lucky again.
Okay. Now, as this election is ongoing in Ondo State, we want to find out how do you expect INEC to handle the results, the collation of results at the end of the day, because that was the issue during the Edo Guba polls. And of course, there were so many conflicting and divergent opinions about the role INEC played in that aspect. In this Ondo State election, how do you expect the correlation to go? Is it going to be transmitted live to IREF, or what is going to happen at the end of the day? Because the outcome actually determines to a great extent the outcome, that is INEC's conduct, the outcomes of the election.
Okay, maybe James will throw more light on it. Okay. I'll just give.
INEC, as usual, has assured us the same way they assured us at the 2023 general election that all elections were going to be transmitted live, using the IREF. So I'm still trusting INEC, because I trusted them all that time.
But however, it was alleged that they were not using manual collation, and we saw some mutilated.
Well, let me still give the benefit of doubt as an institution, because the last time at the several stakeholders meetings that the INEC chairman had, he told us how beavers were deployed and the IREF would still be used. And I think in the Edo election, INEC has some things that they use to a large extent as excuse for whatever performance we had. First, they blame the issue of the season because rain. They blamed rain, which was a natural cause, and the volatile political situation in Edo at that time, when there was a clash for the Titans, the former Godfathers, the Godfathers who wanted. But I think we have seen less of that in Ondo. So we are expecting, as promised, as INEC promised us, Nigerians were looking out, and we are expecting INEC to give us a better deal in Ondo, because virtually there's no serious excuse. So far so good, because at least we heard of pockets of violence around this time when Edo election was going on. But I think so far in Ondo the situation is a bit better and different.
Yes, earlier we read that in the news that we just had that DSS arrested somebody who was found with money bags in his city, and obviously the guy was about to go and induce voters with that money. Would there ever be a situation whereby voters will not be induced, as well, considering the economic realities of our time?
There is certainly no way, we will not have this kind of ugly scenario play out. And I don't necessarily want to associate it with the economic hardship. Because even when there is no economic hardship, whoever wants to do the wrong thing is likely going to do the wrong thing. We are looking at a number of factors. The desperation of political actors. You see now, the person making the move shows desperation and all of that. As long as you still have these kinds of persons in the system, they will always want to make such inducement. On the other side, as long as you still have people who are not properly enlightened as to what their rights are, and they don't have enough, how do I put it now, without being trying to beat down on them, they don't have the kind of awareness that they should have, or they choose not to have the kind of awareness they should have with regards to knowing where to draw the line morally and all of that. You would have situations like this happen. So the question now is, what does the system do? What does the people in authority do to ensure that these things are curbed as much as possible? Mind you, this one you're talking about now, just at the micro level. At the micro level. But at the macro, at the bigger level, there are other ways of inducing and swaying the way people behave and all of that. Even before elections, they would have done some funny things to make people vote a certain way. So it's a delicate line, that we have to really play along to know how to handle.
And just recently, the SERAP and they threatened the INEC for not prosecuting the electoral violences and those perpetrators of violence in previous election. And of course, the INEC came out to defend itself, saying that it doesn't have such powers rather to do that. So what are we saying? That means people that are perpetrating violence and all manner of electoral acts are going scot-free. Like, for instance, during the presidential election, I remember that so many, quite huge number of electoral offenders were caught, and to date, nothing has been done to them. What can be done about it?
Well, you see, the issue of electoral offenses in Nigeria is no longer, in fact, it's not.
At the time, the National Assembly was suggesting having a tribunal, electoral offense tribunal.
That is what I'm going to. In the Ninth Assembly, we had Electoral Offences Commission Establishment Bill. The bill passed second reading, and it was subjected to public hearing. At the public hearing, INEC was there, and officially INEC confirmed or told those whose power it is to make such laws that, see, we are a toothless bulldog when it comes to prosecution of offenders. Please, we are giving our 100%. It was an appeal, a passionate one at that. if as far as the body language of Professor Mahmoud Yakubu and his tone portrayed, because I happened to be there on that very day. Political parties themselves, the actors, the main actors, because when people buy votes, certainly it is from the political parties because they are the ones who want to win. Political parties themselves, through their own weight behind Electoral Offences Commission, many civil societies, many CSOs were there. You know, everybody give. In fact, that B has the backing of many stakeholders that are engaged in the electoral process. But what happened at the end of the day?
You didn't see the light of day.
The B just, the B was unattended to. Thereafter, after the public hearing, that was where the B stopped. And when the former speaker, who is now the chief of staff to the president, Right Honorable Femi Gbajabiamila, in his valedictory speech of a such when he was about to leave, or when valedictory session, on that day, some of the recommendations he made was to complete work on the Electoral Offences Commission. Because until maybe we have that Electoral Offences Commission established, that we can now look at this issue. Because I think I remember one of the provision of the cases here is the establishment of Electoral Tribunal, how those things could be tried, how those who are involved in this will be tried. But since it has become a rhetoric, it has become a narrative, every time we come out, we talk about vote buying. In fact, and many other electoral offenses, they are still there because as it is now, there is no law or legal framework specifically that to deal with those people who are involved in those electoral offenses ranging from violence to vote buying, rigging, and all manner of things.
Now, the United States just had its presidential election, even Dubai and Congresses. What are the lessons learned? Because everybody was stewed. Of course, what happens to America when America sneezes, the whole world catches cold. So the whole world was interested in what was going to play out. And of course, what Nigerians and the rest of the world saw was a transparent system whereby the vote was conducted, the election was conducted the previous Wednesday night and Tuesday night, and the next morning the votes already started tallying up. And of course, even Trump, before even the roundup of the elections vote, he already knew he was going to be the winner. So what are the lessons learned? What should happen? Because in these modern times, to be conducting election manually, it doesn't tell well of the most populous black country.
Where do we begin? That's the first thing that came to my mind as this question was coming up. Where do we begin? There is a, it's really baffling because in the course of the US elections, the political system there, I know NDI and IRI, they invited key political stakeholders from Nigeria.
Yes, they did.
To come and observe the elections. Even before the elections proper, they invited them to come and observe the Congress, the conventions of the two major parties.
I also saw some journalists.
They invite, and this is something they've been doing for a very long time.
For a very long time.
Because they consider Nigeria, we pride ourselves as copying the presidential system of the United States. And so these two institutions, NDI and IRI, that's National Democratic Institute and Independent
National Republican.
They always make an effort to ensure that they bring key stakeholders to come and observe the processes, so that when we come back, we can distill, but unfortunately, nothing seems to be happening. We also sent from our INEC. We also send delegates. I saw some the other day on social media, snapping themselves and bragging about what they went there to do. We send these guys, they go there, they observe these things. And in fairness to them, I am very sure that they would have written their reports, their observations and all of that. But what happens? It comes back and it's dumped somewhere. And it tells back to what Mr. James pointed out a couple of seconds ago. The political will to get the right things done has always been the problem. It's not as if we don't know what to do or we don't know how to go about things. It's about the interest of strategic power brokers who will not want these things to work, because if they do work, it limits their chance of holding on to power. So that has always been the problem. The question is, what do we do? What do we do? So
Yes.
I'm one of those who believe that to make a major shake-up in this whole system, it might not go the whole way, but I do think that we should start by winning off the appointment of the INEC chairman from the presidency. From the president. These are recommendations that have been there. They are not new.
But it still have, but Chibuzo, if I have to come, it still depends on the INEC chair involved. In the sense that we saw Jega, he connected, who was appointed by Jonathan, President Goodluck, and he lost. Jonathan lost under Jega during the second term. So, I mean,
Okay, let me chip in.
follow. I'm saying that it depends on the
Okay.
moral
No.
and
See,
integrity of the occupier of that position.
We're a
Right.
democratic state, and functions of government are divided among the executive, the legislature, and the judiciary. Say the Electoral Act that you have there, the U.S. election was made seamless with almost 100% deployment of technology. But then, in the case, our Electoral Act, there's a vacuum.
No, I'm coming to
Okay.
that. I was just like, let's look at American elections and the lessons learned. I'm actually coming to that. I'm also going to direct it to you. I just said, let's have your view on the just concluded election. Don't forget, Nigerians are just a creative lot. We saw so many images when they said, oh, Kamala Harris is only Mahmoud Jega that can, Mahmoud Yakubu that can save you now. And we saw, it was really, really hilarious. So what are the lessons learned, James?
The lessons learned is that we need to make our electoral laws. We have to strengthen them. We don't have to leave what I can describe as purposeful lacuna for it to be used, because the Electoral Act, if you look at the provision, when you talk about transmission, INEC has to transmit using technology where applicable.
And you know that caveat.
Because of that caveat.
That is where they
It is very possible. Use of application will be very possible in Otako, but it will not be possible in Maraba.
Okay.
But there is.
But they also left it for INEC that INEC will take decisions
That
that
is what
it deems fit.
it deems fit.
And you know that is what the
Exactly. So
that
political culture matters.
matters.
See, no matter the kind of laws or the tech you want to introduce to this whole thing, if our political culture is not right, we're always going to have problems. Don't forget that the 2020 election was in the US, was a major test, in fact, it was a stress test for the American political system and its culture. You saw how much Trump made a fuss about how the whole thing played out,
it was rigged
and how electoral officers stood their ground and insisted. Why? Because in those states, in fact, you don't even have a general INEC per se in the US. States handle their own elections.
Yes.
You know, so people were able to stand their ground and say no. And most of those people who conduct the elections in the US are
many volunteers.
Yeah, most of them are even the people who most of them are even party affiliates. You understand? But they have the political culture that this is our own. We can't afford to mess it up. Why? If we mess it up, the repercussions will be felt by us directly.
Yes.
So there's that consciousness. But ironically, here I don't think that fundamental thing is playing out in the way we handle things. People just do things like, let me get what I can get now. And the same thing we complain about vote buying and all of that. You just collect your own money, and then you forget that there are implications and repercussions for the little. It's just like the butterfly effect. The butterfly perches here, and it could create a lot of destabilization in the system. So there's that political culture is not there yet. They're not there yet. How are we going to get there? I don't know. Perhaps we might have to evolve into it. Because people also say, the US, if the US with over 250 years of exactly could undergo what they went through in 2020, the 2020 election. And you have people like Obama and all of them crying that our democracy is under threat, our democracy is under threat. Who are we not to really sit back and think twice? But what it therefore shows is that there is a need for more deliberate effort to ensure that we don't just get our systems right, but we get our moral, political rightness in place so that all of these things, the structures and the systems can be properly put in place to help us get better.
Thank you so much. Viewers, in case you're just tuning in, the program is Ondo State Decides today, November 16, 2024. As we speak here, as we are analyzing situations from here in the studio, Ondo State indigenes are actually going about voting in their next governor for the next 4 years. And we are still talking about the political process in Nigeria, talking about the Electoral Act. How far has it gone? Because the last time we heard there was a move to amend it.
Yeah.
Where are we?
Okay, there are bills in the National Assembly for the amendment of the Electoral Act. Some of those bills have passed through second reading, while others were dropped for proper consultation before they will go ahead. But the constitutional review, for instance...
However, the part of the review that has actually been on the public space, the issue of a delegate list, is it what concerns politicians they should be interested in?
Delegate list, I think presently there is no issue about that because it was settled in the Electoral Act, where people who were appointees have to resign their appointments before they participate. And I think the issue of statutory delegate was also addressed. So what most of those bills that are coming, they are not actually about the cruise of the matter, like of things that like now, if there is an electoral bill that the if there is an Electoral Act Amendment bill that is talking about the use of technology, of course, by that time, Nigerians, in fact, our leaders will cheerfully tell you that we don't have much internet penetration.
But they
keep on telling us, okay, by 20, they said, they were talking about a certain level or almost total penetration by 2025. So maybe by next year, by 2025, we'll also see whether if we still have that level of internet penetration that we give room for the deployment of technology for this thing. And that Electoral Offences Commission is what is very, very important. And it should not be made to be a toothless bulldog. They should have an action to take. And the action to take there should not be informed by political, tribal, or religious indices, but it should be all about what works for Nigeria. Because if you look at it, almost good number of Nigerians, that is why we have even the issue of political apathy. Because in fact, our level of patriotism is dropping by the day. Because we lack confidence in the leadership process. We lack confidence in almost everything. Then the hardship that is going on in the country. For instance, there's a level of apathy. As much as they say there are no issues in Ondo, there are reports of low turnout.
Okay.
For instance, in the polling unit in Ward 45, polling unit 45 in Ward 7 in Yaba Ondo West local government area, no voter as at 12 noon has turned out. Yes. The electoral officials are just, the pool officials are just there waiting. Like I heard, like the presiding officer told some journalists that approached, he said we are waiting. Once it is 2:30, we don't see anybody, we move. When I asked, he told me that maybe he told them that maybe it's because it's a new polling unit. But then can we be talking on new polling units? Because those polling units in 2021, INEC created additional 56,000 polling units. From 2021, sensitization has to. So, in fact, everybody has to sit up because just like it is popular to say that we play a lot in this country. So, well, in fact, we play a lot in this country. And these are some of the issues we have to, in fact, we have to develop a culture. We have to show that, yes, Nigeria belongs to us. Because the way it is going now, I wonder which country we are going to hand over to our children.
Yes, thank you so much. Now, I'm moving over to Chibuzo. You know, you talked about a lack of political culture we have in the country. Now, we said James makes it obvious, saying that the Electoral Offences Commission is very, very crucial way to have a viable political system. Now, Chibuzo, if the offenders that were caught now is the party, his party comes into power, won't the person in power, his party member, free him automatically because he was doing it for him?
Because he's a contributor to his success.
Yes.
That's the thing. That's where you see. I'm not saying creating these offenses, all these commissions are not right. They are good. They are necessary for a budding democracy. The challenge is, for instance, we have the EFCC. How well has the EFCC fared? Let's not. We are not trying to beat down any institution. Okay. Most of the I was listening to the EFCC spokesperson speak recently, and he was saying something about since this new administration, we have scored convictions of close to 3,000 or thereabout. How many of them are high profile? When we mean high profile, I don't mean these other crimes are less injurious to society. You understand? We've had series of political exposed persons since the end of '99.
Yes.
Up to date, how many convictions have they got from those high profile who commit the most injurious financial crimes in Nigeria? How many of those have we got? So the challenge is, if we have these commissions, the electoral tribunal thing, because INEC has also been complaining that they have to be unbundled, you know, so that they can just focus on election management and close their eyes to these other things. Fine, but if you still do that, we bring them to the tribunal, electoral tribunal. Who will hear those cases? The same people appointed by.
Exactly.
So we will just be going in circles.
We're going to the cycle.
We're going in circles. That's where my concern is. So that's why I feel perhaps maybe we'll get to that point where we will evolve away. You know, we will evolve away from some of these things, and people begin to see things differently. And maybe if we get one or two, an aggregate of good leaders, not just one, an aggregate of good leaders who can push the country in a different direction. Maybe it can help to change the thinking,
or perhaps a responsive electorate. Exactly.
Because as it stands now, all the institutions are just being they're just tossed around by, you know, the crop of leaders we have now. They will make the law, and they will find a way of undermining the law. That's the challenge we face.
It's really, really sad. While we're still on to Ondo State Decides 2024, we are awaiting news as the election goes on in the state. And we'll also be joining with our correspondents in the state. But as time goes on, we'll also be feeding you back on what is happening towards the collation of results. Don't go away, stay tuned. It's on this note we bring to an end the first half of today's program. Stay tuned.
Thank you for watching. For sponsorship and advert placements, please contact 080-3688-6158. Last Word Leadership Podcast Studio. You have